Hey, welcome back. I'm so glad you are joining us for content this month. We are talking about innocence. What if you could have a return to innocence? And perhaps Jesus would like to give you that as a gift. Now, for those just checking in with us, this is part three, and I do want to be that guy saying, hey, please check out part one and part two. If you can, part one will give you a little bit extra context for our characters in our story. We are reading from the book of Luke, the ancient, magical, mystical book of Luke, and we're looking at Luke chapter 19, and one of my favorite stories. Guy by the name of Zaccheus interacting with my hero, Jesus. Now, for a little bit of context, even though part one has the most of it, Zaccheus, the name Zaccheus means innocent or not guilty, pure. And yet, ironically, his life is the exact opposite. Zaccheus is a crook, he's a stealer, he's a thief, he's a manipulator. And yet, Jesus befriends him in a magnificent way, in a significant way. He stays at his house. We think he's like a guest overnight at Zacchaeus' home. Now, Zacchaeus is a Jewish man who's in cahoots with Rome to extend taxation on a city named Jericho. And this is how it works. He extends taxation to the city of Jericho. He gets Rome's taxes, but then he adds extra taxes that he fills his own pockets with. The Jews hate him. They despise him. They don't like him at all. But as the story unfolds in Luke chapter 19, Zacchaeus has heard about this new extraordinary public figure who is taking the known world by storm, if you will. And his name is Jesus. The way he moves, the way he teaches, the miracles he does, how he lives his life is nothing short of fascinating. Zacchaeus, he likes to be in the know. He thinks, I gotta get a gander. I gotta get a look. Gander? Who says gander? But I gotta get a look at this guy, Jesus. But the story tells us he's short in stature. So he climbs a well-known tree during that day, a fig tree, just so he can get a glimpse of Jesus. As the story unfolds, Jesus does literally the unthinkable. He stops under the exact tree Zacchaeus has climbed. He says his name, Zacchaeus, and the crowd must begin to murmur. And of course they did, and we'll talk about that in a moment. He says, hurry down. I'm appointed to stay at your house today, as if to insinuate it was always my plan to go to your home. Now, to go to somebody's home in that day was an intimate act of approval, association. Jesus is now associating with an infamous thug. And you can imagine what unfolds. Verse 6 in our story of Luke chapter 19 says, he scurried down the tree and came face to face with Jesus, Zacchaeus and Jesus. As Jesus left to go with Zacchaeus, many in the crowd complained, gossiped, murmured, or whispered. They said things like this, look at this. Of all the people to have dinner with, he's going to eat in the home of a crook? And that brings me to what we are calling part three of a return to innocence. Could Jesus, through his love, his scandalous love, give you a life without guilt, a life without shame, anxiety, fear? What would you, you're going to have some of that in your life. Fair enough. But what if you had far less? What if you woke up tomorrow morning with a sense of hope, with a sense of real optimism that something grand and great could unfold in your life, not because you've earned it or deserved it, but because God loves you and chose you and wants to bless you. Why? Because he wants to, because he thinks you're amazing. Not because you always act amazing, not because I always act amazing. Sometimes we're ugly and mean and selfish, but his love remains. That's what's changed my life. That's why I'm here doing this right now, because what gets me out of bed in the morning not only is my gorgeous wife, and that is a fact, but it's also the extraordinary love of Jesus. That though I am a fool, and I am so, stupid and so dumb and so mean and so inconsiderate. Somebody was sharing their soul with me last night, only to wake up to a text this morning to say, hey, it didn't seem like you were present or listening. And I was really sharing my heart. And you know what? They were right. I wasn't present and I wasn't listening. I was thinking about myself. Maybe you can relate. And yet, God's love met me today again. That love doesn't make sense. That love doesn't add up. And yet it's here. What's interesting about our story, and honestly, I gotta think this through. I don't want to exaggerate, even though I love exaggeration. I don't know if I've ever preached a message on what I'm about to preach this particular message on right here. I'd like to talk to you about what people say about you. I'd like to talk to you about what people whisper about you. I'd like to talk to you about what people gossip about you. Perhaps I'd like to talk to you about what people post about you. One of the saddest things in the whole wide world these days, if you ask me, is to look at all the comments on social media around things you or I post. Without fail, without exception, there's going to be somebody who says something that just hurts your heart, breaks your heart. What are we going to do with this? We live in such an unusual, extraordinary age, the information age, the tech boom, the tech age. And so now some of the things that people used to say, in the 60s and the 70s and the 80s and 90s that, you could only hear if you overheard their whispers, they now put it on our page or put it on our Instagram or post it on X. And it makes us feel some kind of way. And so it says in here, thousands of years ago, guys, like 2,000 years ago, people were gossiping. 2,000 years ago, people were whispering. And why were they whispering? Because God's love didn't make sense. Because God's association didn't make sense. God's grace didn't make sense. God's appearance of forgiveness was frustrating and annoying. God can't love Zaccheus. God can't bless Zaccheus. Zaccheus is a bad guy. Well, what about me, God? So much of our culture and our world functions this way. Can I ask you a really pointed question? And again, I've never done this before, so bear with me. I've never done, I don't think ever, a sermon on this. So let me ask you a question I've never asked in any sermon in my life, and I have been doing this for like 27 years, which is wild. But let me ask you, I think longer than 27 years. I'm bad at math. Here's the question I want to ask you. What are you going to do about the things people say about you? What are you going to do? Let me ask another question. What are you currently doing about all the things people say about you? Now, I love the sentiment, and I've heard it before, like, hey, nobody's talking about you. Nobody's thinking about you. They're thinking about themselves. Love that. I really do. I think in a lot of ways that can be true, but not always, unfortunately. Sometimes people do think about you, and not always good things. Sometimes, you want to hear something wild about the human nature? If you fail, people may talk about you, but not nearly as much as they'll talk about you if you succeed. That's when they'll talk about you. And yet, if you're like me, I think to myself, if I do something so grand and great, all the whispers and the gossips will stop. No. They'll get worse. Think about it. Like, there's a lot of things to whisper about around Zaccheus. He's a crook. He's a thug. He's a liar. He's a cheat. He's a thief. Talk about that. But guess when the whispers got the loudest? When Jesus went to his house. That's when the ancient text says people started to talk. People started to complain. People started to whisper, gossip. What is this? Why? Because we're human. Envy, jealousy. Why did they get to have that? You ever been on social media maybe one time in your life and somebody's posting something awesome that happened to them and you hearted it, but you really didn't? You're like, super cool. And in your mind, you're like, for real? For real. They got a boat. They got that job. They got that job. My resume, their resume. They got the job. Hearted, but you don't heart it. What you'd like to do is thumbs down it. You know, you're like, I can't, how did I not get, it's wild. It's kind of overwhelming. The other day, I was in an intense conversation with a friend, and he goes, well, you wouldn't believe what they say about you. And I am so sensitive to people, honestly, to a fault. And I just got quiet, and they could tell they hit a nerve. And my head started to spin. Later, I would call my wife and a friend, and they could tell my head was spinning. I was quiet. Hey, how'd the meeting go? Not very good. What do you mean? Well, I think this person was trying to help me, but they just said how much people and what they were saying about me. And I don't, right in your head starts to spin. If you're like me, you think, well, I got to do something. Like I got to fix what these people are saying about me. You wouldn't believe what happened. This is a real story. This happened to me just last week. And I can't believe that in the series that I had prepared, that this kind of sermon would come up. Out of nowhere, one of my closest friends texted me and said, can I share something with you that I think Jesus showed me this morning? Of course, I mean, in my line of work, you always text back, bro, for sure, absolutely. And my friend said this, and I quote, God showed me that Jesus did not fix the whispers they whispered about him. Same day, guys. It was afternoon. And for a second, I was like, did this friend talk to this friend? Like, what is going on? And I said, whoa. I just text back, whoa. And he said, no, for real. He said, people whisper about you, Judah. You can't try to fix it. Just let it go. I know who you are. I love you. I believe in you. And all of a sudden, I'm like, whoa. First of all, I'm like, my friend really hears from God. That is wild, right? Like, some of you are watching this going, I need to get new friends. Okay, fair enough. I got some really, really good friends, I must admit. But are you like me? Are you trying to fix the whispers about you? You know who didn't do that? Jesus. You know what's wild? I think some of the jaded, kind of agitated, frustrated views we have of life is because we spend time thinking about what we think people are saying about us, or perhaps what somebody else told us they said about us. And even if we don't approach that person to fix it, we try to fix it in our head in some pretend conversation. Now, if you've never done this, please call me immediately. Go to Pastor Chat because I'd like to speak to you because you're the first human being in my entire 46 years of life on this planet that has never done this. For the rest of us, we do this probably daily. Somebody says to you, well, you know what they said about you. And I wish it didn't stick to me, but it sticks to me like honey. And I can't get it off my brain. And I'm like, wait, well, what? Why would they say that? And all of a sudden, I got things to do. I have a marriage to love and care for, and kids to take care of, and a Jesus to worship and follow, and friends to take. But all I can think about is what I think someone thinks someone said about me. You know what's weird? Jesus never does that. Think about it. Think of all the things that were said about him. Think about just our story we just read. I mean, if I was Jesus, I think part of the deal here is like, if you knew his name, which is probably a divine moment for him to go, Zaccheus. I don't know if anybody told him. I just think he had a word from the heavens. He is the fullness of the God in body. Zaccheus, I think he could also get a sense that people are whispering and stop Zaccheus and say, hold on, Z, hold on for a moment. Hey, I know what you're saying. This is my guy. And I just want to say, you got a problem with him, you got a problem with me. That would be like a real American thing to do. That would be like, in my part of the world, we call it loyalty. Everybody wants loyalty. Can I tell you what I want? Love. Love is way more important than loyalty. Love includes caring for people, taking care of people. But everybody wants loyalty these days. I want loyal friends. I heard one preacher say years ago, motives, mixed at best. Human beings, mixed motives at best. Yeah, we got people out in these streets claiming, bro, I got your back 100%. Nobody has anybody's back 100% of the time, friends. It just doesn't exist. And you would think that Jesus would stop the social setting and say, hey, y'all got to have each other's back. You got to be loyal. Don't whisper about my guy. Never says anything. Just keeps it moving. Just keeps it moving. In other words, wasted energy. Don't do it. There's a rule in Scripture that what Jesus does often, or what he never does, can tell you a lot about how we can move through this life. Jesus always accepted children, women, which in antiquity were determined by a lot of people to be non-humans. Didn't matter. Marginalized, overlooked. Jesus always said, no. Those are my people. No, those are all, always did that. You know what he never did? Fix the gossip and fix the whispers. You know what I realized? I lose a lot of innocence when I try to fix everybody's perspective of me. It's wasted energy. And this is such a specific sermon. Honestly, I'm not entirely sure why I'm doing this one. I think there are bigger fishes to fry. I really do. But it seems to be a part of our story. The text seems to say God wants you to know that his love made people whisper about Zaccheus. His love was so good, it created gossip. I think sometimes we think we got to fix the whisper, we got to fix the gossip, and we got to fix the complaints. We got to fix the criticism. No, you don't. Just leave it with God. Just trust God. Can I take you to an old proverb written by King Solomon? And he says it in the Passion Translation, and perhaps it sheds even more light on these back-to-back unusual proverbs. But listen to this, Proverbs chapter 26, verse 4. Don't respond to the words of a fool with more foolish words, or you'll become as foolish as he is. Hold on a second. Let's read that again. Don't respond to the words of a fool with more foolish words, or you'll become as foolish as he is. Is it just me, or like by fixing or attempting to fix all the whispers and all the gossip, you end up kind of joining the fray and joining the crowd and joining the nonsense and joining the chaos, and you feel chaotic. Last night, my son was playing high school basketball, and the ref fouled him out of the game. To be fair, honestly, I think the ref was a little bit biased. We all are. We're humans. And he wanted my big 6'5" son out of the game. So he fouled him out on a terrible call. And I'm sitting in the stands and I'm saying to myself, and the last thing I'm thinking about is that I'm a preacher or a pastor. I can tell you that much. I am first and foremost a dad. And I was thinking, I got a wonderful case. I was feeling like Johnny Cochran vibes, okay? I was ready to make a case in the court of law against this referee and what he had done to my son in his last regular season game of high school basketball, senior year. You foul him out of the game. We lose in overtime. Well, of course we lose in overtime because he's 6'5", 220 pounds, and he's one of the leading scorers of the team. And somehow, Mr. Ref, I feel like you knew that. And boy, I wanted to give him a piece of my mind. But then it occurred to me, only I will lose in that equation. I will waste energy that I can give to my family, more importantly, energy I can give to my son, who's not going to be put back in the game. And he's sitting over on that bench grieved that he fouled out of this basketball game. So instead, I made a decision, hopefully aided by Jesus, to save my energy for him after the game. Bit of a metaphor, isn't it? Now, I wish I could say that's how I move through life all the time, but I have yelled at plenty of referees. I really have. But that time, I saved my energy. I saved my virtue, and I kept it moving. That's what Jesus does in this story. People are whispering, and I know he knows. You know what? I'll take it a step further. I think Zaccheus knows. Zaccheus probably kind of liked it. You know when people are whispering because you're so blessed and you're so favored, you're like, let them talk. But no matter what reason they're talking, protect your energy. Guard your virtue. It's precious and God gave it to you. And perhaps, like Solomon said, if you try to fix the whispers, you become just like the whisperers. If you try to fix the gossip, perhaps you become a gossip. Maybe in this return to innocence, what if we started to move in the social media age with, we don't respond to the posts. We don't try to. Now listen, let me go back to Proverbs just for a moment, because I read you Proverbs 26:4. Now look at Proverbs 26:5. He says, instead, if you're asked a silly question, answer it with words of wisdom, so the fool doesn't think he's so clever. There is a time and place where you should respond with words of wisdom. Don't fight fire with fire. Yeah, well, guess what? Your mom, you know what I mean? Like, don't like turn in, don't start slinging mud with those who sling mud. But use words of wisdom. So sure, there's a time to respond, but I want to draw your attention again to the wonderful ways of Jesus. He gives no mind, no energy, and no time to those who gossip, whisper, and complain. What if his love was so good and so true that it set you free from defending yourself to the endless masses on the World Wide Web? What if it just set you free? You know what's wild? I didn't really know how this sermon was going to go and what role it would play in this series. Perhaps it's the most practical of the sermons here in part 3. But the truth is, if you and I got set free from defending ourselves on the internet, we would have a lot more enjoyment in this life. My last observation is this: walk on with Jesus. Just keep walking. You got places to go and things to do and people to see and wonderful adventures to be had. Jesus is coming to your house. Don't get caught up in the fray. Don't get caught up in the whispers. Don't get caught up in everything they're saying. And friend, if you think that somehow, some way you can succeed so great and so grand that it will still and quiet all the whispers, I promise you it's just the opposite. And I don't know this necessarily from personal experience, but I must say I have some friends who have accomplished some of the grandest and greatest things that this entire world has to offer. And yet their grand and global accomplishments seem to only welcome and invite more gossip, more whisper, more complaints, more pain. Be careful what you wish for. Ultimately, what if this 23-minute little talk helped you not send that text, not respond and rebuttal that post? What if you saved your energy, kept on walking and working and loving Jesus? Maybe that's a little gift on the way in this month of March that God wants to give you. He seemed to give it to Zaccheus. What I love is perhaps Zaccheus was so caught up with Jesus befriending him that maybe he couldn't even be bothered by the whispers. And maybe there is the extraordinary, magical space of God's love, that you just get so like, bro, I can't believe you love me. And in some way, you can't even be bothered by the gossip and the whispers of people. I pray that for you. I do. I feel like in some small way, perhaps this part 3 of this series of content in March could be a gift to you, and I hope it is. So I'm going to say one last thing in conclusion. The love of Jesus is so grand and great, it can help get your mind off the mean things people say about you. It's that powerful. It's that good. Let me pray for you. God, I thank you for this really cool, practical glimpse and moment into how you help us walk past, walk through, and walk beyond the things that people say about us. Whether in the middle of our greatest failures or our greatest successes, we know people are going to say stuff. Just to focus on your love and your friendship and keep it moving, and help us to protect and preserve the extraordinary energy that you have given us. If you're watching this and you want to know the love of Jesus, the forgiveness of Jesus, just say, I want to know. You say that right out loud. You hear yourself say it. Your life will never be the same again. We love you. I got a couple of more weeks. We're going to talk about this story, make some more observations, and I hope it is an encouragement to you. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next week.
It's been a minute, where do I begin? I've let the distance creep its way back in. I've offered love so inconsistently. Your heart is steady, you won't change on me. You're still worthy, you're still crowned in majesty, you're still perfect, you still bring me to my knees. You're still holy, you're still good beyond belief, King of glory, you're still everything, oh everything to me. Oh help me Jesus, stir your fire in me. Renew my faith when doubt is crippling. I'm open, ready, heart is on my sleeve. I need your presence more than anything. You're still worthy, you're still crowned in majesty, you're still perfect, you still bring me to my knees. You're still holy, you're still good beyond belief, King of glory, you're still everything, oh everything to me. And all that I need is you. All that I need is you. All of your heart, all that you are. And all that I need is you, Lord. All that I need is you. All of your heart, all that you are, all that I need is you, Lord. All that I need is you. All of your heart, all that you You're still worthy. You're still crowned in majesty. You're still perfect. You still bring me to my knees. You're still holy. You're still good beyond. King of glory.